Greenland is an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark with a population of 56,000 residents, predominantly Kalaalleq Inuit. Greenland remained a colony of Denmark until its connection was severed on April 9, 1940, early in World War II, after Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany. On April 8, 1941, the United States then occupied Greenland to defend it against a possible invasion by Germany. The US returned control to Denmark in 1945 but never really left. After the Second World War, Denmark was not able to defend Greenland, so in April 1951 Denmark and the United States signed the Greenland Defense Agreement. Replacing the 1941 agreement, it allows the latter country to keep its military bases in Greenland, and to establish new bases or defense areas if deemed necessary by NATO. The American military can freely use and move between these defense areas, but cannot infringe upon Danish sovereignty in Greenland. The agreement remains in force as long as the NATO treaty does. This led to the creation of Thule Air Base in 1951, renamed Patuffik Space Base in 2023, which is the military's northernmost base of operations and part of the U.S. Early Warning System. Spanning Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, the U.S. Air Force and Space Force operate approximately 50 radar sites comprising the Northern Warning System. Given that the Arctic region provides the shortest distance for adversaries to threaten the U.S., this network of radar sites is America's first line of defense across Earth's northern expanse. There is now only 150 U.S. troops at this base that once held 10,000 during its Cold War peak. That could now be changing after renewed statements by President-elect Trump, who was attempting to purchase or outright take Greenland due to national security purposes.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
The president-elect originally floated the idea in his first term in office when discussing the prospect with his senior advisors back in 2019, but he left office without making any movement toward acquiring the territory. Now, with less than 2 weeks until he begins a second term, Trump is revisiting the idea, and his son Donald Trump Jr. traveled to Nuuk, Greenland with other representatives of the incoming U.S. president. He is not the first U.S. president to suggest buying Greenland. The idea first surfaced during the 1860s under the presidency of Andrew Johnson, who pursued the territory for the same security reasons. The GIUK Gap is an area in the northern Atlantic Ocean that forms a naval choke point. Its name is an acronym for Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, the gap being the two stretches of open ocean among these three landmasses. It separates the Norwegian Sea and the North Sea from the open Atlantic Ocean. During the Cold War, Russia relied on the ability of its nuclear submarines to pass through the GIUK Gap in order to ensure maximum military capability. The Germans also targeted this gap during World War II with U-boats. The Danish government has historically used its jurisdiction over foreign policy in both Greenland and the Faroe Islands to assist in securing the GIUK Gap and the wider Arctic for its allies. The Danish government proposed a package that would allow for the purchase of 2 new inspection ships, 2 new long-range drones, and 2 extra dog sled teams. It would also include funding for increased staffing at Arctic Command in the capital Nuuk and an upgrade to the airport in Kangerlussuaq to handle F-35 supersonic fighter aircraft. The new partial agreement also prioritizes establishing an air warning radar on the Faroe Islands, which Denmark and the Faroese government agreed on the framework for this in 2022. The radar will surveil the airspace between Iceland, Norway, and the UK, with a 400 kilometers range. Specifically, the radar will be located on the Sornfelli Mountain, where the Danish defense previously operated a NATO radar station that was shut down in 2007. Danish MH-60 or Seahawk helicopters and ASW frigates were also fitted with torpedoes and sonar for tracking submarine movement. For NATO allies, the GIUK gap is vital in terms of barrier defense for sea lines of communication protection. Slogs are vulnerable in the North Atlantic, both in the gap and beyond, and the US and NATO rely on the Kingdom of Denmark to assist in protecting this critical infrastructure, including the vast number of seabed data cables. The Russian fleet has in recent years strategically upgraded its capabilities for covert subsea operations related to the targeting of seabed infrastructure, and reports of Russian mapping of critical seabed infrastructure in the North Sea and the seabed around Denmark are increasing. The S-Link 2 power cable, which transmits energy from Finland to Estonia across the Baltic Sea, went down on December 25 after an evident rupture. This came a couple of weeks after two undersea cables carrying internet data deep in the Baltic Sea were damaged, drawing warnings from European governments of possible Russian hybrid warfare targeting global communications infrastructure. This time a Chinese flagged cargo ship called the Yipeng 3 docked in the Danish waters was suspected. Greenland is famed for its plentiful supply of fish, but this isn't the only natural resource it boasts. The island is also sitting on top of rich supplies of minerals and oil. It is estimated there are billions of barrels worth of oil along the west coast and under the seabed of the east coast. New oil and gas exploration in Greenland was banned in 2021 on environmental grounds, so almost none of this supply is currently being tapped. Greenland has also banned mining near the southern town of Narsak, home to one of the largest deposits of rare elements on Earth, particularly uranium. These stores have Russia and China rushing for the high north. Two-thirds of Greenland lies within the Arctic Circle, where the receding ice caps have revealed vast reserves of vital resources. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that the Arctic holds an estimated 90 billion barrels, roughly 15%, of the world's undiscovered conventional oil resources and some 40 billion barrels, roughly 30%, of its undiscovered conventional natural gas resources. The region is also flush with sorely needed rare earth minerals integral to the production of modern battery and microchip technology. Arctic conditions are ideal for maximizing the benefit of renewable energy capture methods. The vast expanse is ripe for the construction of solar panels and wind turbines, and the huge seas present opportunities for marine turbines to produce hydroelectric power. Russia, which owns 40% of the Arctic coastline, has been particularly proactive in cranking up military activity. It is currently building the world's largest fleet of nuclear icebreakers that will dominate the Arctic waters and open up new routes shipping in the winter. In regards to trade and resource extraction, Russia lays claim to ownership and control over the majority of the Northern Sea Route, the most accessible Arctic shipping path which could become a new thoroughfare for international trade. The route runs along Russia's Arctic coast and therefore falls within Russia's exclusive economic zone, allowing the country to assume control of shipping activities, navigation and resource exploitation. Foreign vessels therefore have to seek permission to navigate in these waters and are helped on their way by Russian icebreakers, paying fees to Russian authorities for the trouble. This is a major point of contention for many territories, including the United States, which has argued, so far unsuccessfully, that large parts of the NSR should be considered international waters. Additionally, the increasing accessibility of existing trade routes like the Northern Sea Route, or the potential for new routes like the Transpolar Sea Route, could drastically cut shipping times and fuel use. The distance from a northwestern European port to the Far East along the NSR, for example, is almost 40% shorter than the traditional route via the Suez Canal. More than 50 Soviet-era Arctic bases, including airfields, radar stations, cargo ports, missile launch pads and naval yards, have been renovated, while others, including dozens of airfields in the Kola Peninsula some 200 miles east of Finland, have been expanded to host larger forces, including nuclear bombers and missiles. China's plan to take control of the Arctic is dubbed the Polar Silk Road, and was formally announced in 2018. The project will open up trade and energy routes across Russia's far north. China, which has the world's biggest army by personnel, describes itself as a near-Arctic state, despite not having any right to sovereignty over any Arctic waters or continental shelves. China is classed as an observer to the Arctic Council, the group of 8 Arctic states comprised of Canada, Denmark, via Greenland, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and the United States. Greenland is also a key location in China's Polar Silk Road, a plan to expand their economic influence through the region. Chinese stakeholders own claims to Greenland's large rare earth deposit Kvanefjeld, which has vast stores of uranium and which has been eyed up by the US. Cultivating influence in the high north and access to developing Arctic waterways is paramount for Beijing, which at present is forced to conduct the bulk of its trade through a series of key choke points not under its control. One such location is the Strait of Malacca, a strategic bottleneck bordered by Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, all of whom are partnered with the US. On November 25, 2008, in the 2008 Greenlandic self-government referendum, Greenlanders voted for the Self-Government Act, which transferred more power from the Danish government to the local Greenlandic government. Under this structure, Greenland gradually assumed responsibility for a number of governmental services such as police, courts, and the Coast Guard, gave Greenland a say in foreign policy, provided a more definite split of future oil revenue, and made the Greenlandic language the sole official language for the majority Inuit population. The Danish government retains control of citizenship, monetary policy, and foreign affairs, including defense, but in recent years the push for independence has been getting stronger. One local told The Guardian, "The hatred for Denmark has never been higher in some parts of the population, and the gratitude for the US during the Second World War and the Cold War in terms of military protection has never been higher as well." Chair of Naalakkersuisut noted that he's ready to speak to President-elect Trump, but he reiterated that Greenland is for the Greenlandic people. "We do not want to be Danish, we do not want to be American. We want to be Greenlandic." Greenland is costing Denmark roughly 340 million euros a year in subsidies. Although militarily there are only 17,000 active Danish troops, and most of the country's heavy military equipment has been donated to Ukraine, there is heavy doubt that Trump will forcefully try to take the Danish territory as he suggested. For the latest geopolitical news, like, comment, and subscribe.